Hi all, this is the second of two videos that I'm doing that go over the private label leads product idea spreadsheet. So the first video I went over how things are organized and what each of these columns mean and how data is represented in here. In this video, I wanted to go over how to actually use this spreadsheet based on what your budget is, what your goals are, and what your skill level is to help narrow down those products that meet those particular items. So I am going to assume that you are interested in any product category. However, if it turns out that you're interested in only specific categories, then I would then filter those results. And in this spreadsheet, the filtering is turned on. And so you have these little drop down buttons here. Now, these may look a little different, depends on if you're under a Windows machine or if you're under a Mac, which that's what this is, or if you import this into, say, Google Sheets. So they're slightly different, but they all have the same functionality. So when you take this drop-down button here for column B for primary category, you could say, instead of select all, you could go down and say, let's just say you were interested in pet supplies. You could select that one, and you can see here in the bottom left, it says 3 of 60 records found. So there's a total of 60 records or rows of data. So there's only 3 left if you were just going to look at pet supplies. But for this example, I'm going to assume that, and I'm going to clear the filter here, that any category you'd be interested in. But you could filter that down as a starting point if that's what you want to focus on. From there, I would start with column J, which is your initial budget required. It doesn't make sense if you only have a $5,000 budget to be focusing on products that have a budget requirement that's going to be larger than that. Row 5 here has a budget required of almost $17,000. Row 6, a little over $23,000. No sense even evaluating those because they're well beyond your budget. So start with column J and put in whatever your budget is. So let's just go for this example that we're going to say you have $5,000 to launch a product. So under here, the filter, it says choose one. I would choose less than or equal to, and let's put 5,000 in here for $5,000. So now, as you can see in the bottom left, we have 20 records, so 20 ideas that match that criteria, or having a budget of $5,000 or less. The next thing I would look at is column K, which is the estimated net profit after launch. So here is just based on what your goals are. What do you want to achieve with this product? If, for example, you're saying, I want to have at least $1,000 net profit, monthly profit after launch, then we can filter that as well. So we take this filter drop down, and I'm going to choose greater than or equal to 1,000. So that's only going to show me results that have at least $1,000. Now we're down to 16 results, as you can see here. So the first 2 categories is we have a list of leads that have a budget requirement of $5,000 or less, and that will make at least $1,000 net profit monthly after launch. The next 2 columns that you want to look at is column M and column N. And column M specifically is based on what your experience level is. So I would say when you look at a product that's high competition, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just that it's probably going to take longer and maybe require a larger budget and or time to get your product to rank. And sometimes there's some skills involved to really get your product to rank when it's highly competitive versus low competitive. So if you have a high skill level, then you don't have to necessarily filter any of these results down. You maybe been selling private label products for a while, you have experience in it, you feel you have confidence to be able to launch any product based on your experience and knowledge. You don't necessarily have to filter this, but I would look at it, if you take all things considering, row 10 here, which has a very high competition level, versus row 12, which is a medium competition level. All things being equal, as we said before, this is relative to each other. So this one should be easier for row 12 to rank and get these sales based on these numbers versus row 10, which is very high competition level. So relative to each other, row 12 would be a better selection if everything else is equal in sense of it matches your particular criteria of what you're looking for. But other than that, you can then look at these other criteria. However, let's just assume in this particular case that you're relatively new into launching products on Amazon, either haven't done a whole lot or still learning. In that particular case, I would not choose products that have a high or very high competition level because you're going to struggle with that probably in most cases if you're just beginning. So under the drop down for the filter for competition level, I would just remove high and very high. And that leaves us now with 5 records that match our criteria. Now, the last particular thing to look at is our confidence level. And so based on a series of criteria that I'm looking at, different indicators, row 12 here and row 39 have the same competition level, but confidence level, those 2 rows have a higher confidence level relative to the others of being successful as a product to launch. So if all things being equal, row 12 and 39 would make more sense to go forward with than the additional ones. As I've said many times, this is all relative. Doesn't mean that this is a higher guarantee. It's just the confidence level, say for row 39, having a higher confidence will be successful. But if there was something in here, let's say row 61, because it has a higher net profit after launch, the highest of this group, between high and medium, it's not significantly that much different to say, you know what, to me, as my goal is I want a higher net profit after launch. So therefore, I'm going to go with row 61 because I know for my net profit that I want to achieve, that has a higher one, and I'm going to go with that. If you're really brand new and maybe you've never done this before or have done things very limited on launches, then maybe it makes sense to look at 12 and 39 when you're starting out because the confidence level is higher. From here, any of these you could pick, but you can also look at other factors like number of reviews and sales, et cetera, et cetera. So for example, in this particular one, row 26 has a heavier weight and a larger length in it compared to the others. And so it may be higher costs, and those are taken into consideration when I'm doing budgeting based on landed costs. So that may be why one of the profitability of this is a little lower than the others because of the size. That probably is one of the indicators for sure. But you can look at different factors. That particular product also has a higher number of reviews relative to, say, 12 and 39, which have a lower set of reviews relatively, and also have a higher search to sales volume, which is one of the indicators that I'm looking at to determine that confidence level. That's why these are higher in most cases as a combination of those factors to give that higher confidence level. But you can take any of these filters that we did, adjust it to what your particular needs are, what your budget is, what your goals are for profitability, what your skill level is, and then within that you can use that confidence level relative to each other to pick one of those products. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about with this particular spreadsheet. Use it filtering whatever factors and things that are important to you. If you're struggling with this or still don't understand the best way to do that, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you look at what you need to do and look at and give you guidance on how we should filter that and what products to pick.